Good afternoon and happy Saturday. Thank you for coming out today to this important immigration special. This is our second one. I am Dawnette Lounds and I'm honored and grateful to be the moderator today to this esteemed panel. There's a lot of information going out in the media. Some we want to dispel today, and some we're going to make sure that you know what you need to do as an immigrant and make sure that we have questions that we will ask and answer. They will answer the questions and make sure that we provide you with the information that you need to not be fearful. There are so many immigrants in this country that are fearful to step outside, to go to school, to go to work. I was talking to someone in the audience today. He's afraid to going out of the country. I'm an immigrant. I'm afraid to go out of the country because it's a choice for someone to let you back in. So there's a lot going on today in our country, and we have this esteemed panel that we want to make sure that they provide you with the information that you need. But before we get started, I want to welcome and thank everyone for being here, because once we get started, we don't know how it's gonna roll. Last time we had this, it went over the time. So I want to acknowledge some people in the audience. Cherry, Frost, would you like to introduce yourself, or? Sure. Because I always.
Yes, I am Cherry Frost. I'm a liaison with the Cobb County Board of Commissioners Chairwoman Lisa Cooper.
Okay, and we have Monica. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Monica Frost, and I'm president of ACHC, which is Georgia Caribbean American Heritage Coalition. Thank you.
And one more person I would like to signal out is Graham. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Graham Jagger, and I'm a retired magistrate judge from the UK. I've been here for 5 years, and I'm like most people here, an immigrant, and I'm glad to be here and to listen to all that's been said today.
And right next to him is Cherry's bodyguard, husband, Mike. At this time, if you haven't silenced your cell phone, we ask that you silence it so we can give the respect and attention to our panelists. So next, we're going to introduce our panelists, and we're going to start with the immigration attorney, Ms. Jamene Christian. They're going to all introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm honored to be here. My name is Jamene Christian. I am an immigration attorney. I've been practicing family immigration law for about 15 years now, practicing law for over 30 years. And I am not an immigrant, but I am married to an immigrant. So I like to say I'm immigrant adjacent. And so I applied for my husband many, many years ago. So I know what it's like to be on both sides of the immigration desk. I have a virtual office, and I represent clients in all 50 states and US territories.
Hi, I'm Shameta. I am the interim chief for Austell Police Department. I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama. And if you're a college football fan, then you know that the best team is Alabama.
You forget you're in Georgia.
I'm well aware. I get reminded all the time. It's okay. We ring loud. So I have about 24 years of law enforcement experience. I started out back in 2000. I was recruited by a federal program that was initiated by Clinton called the Georgia Police Corps. I was recruited from college, and the program focused on recruiting educated individuals to join law enforcement and to focus on community engagement. And so when I graduated from the police academy, I went to College Park Police Department. I was there at College Park from 2000 to 2013. During my time there, I was a field training officer. I was also a member of the SWAT team. And then I worked in investigations as well, specializing in crimes against children and women and sex crimes. And then I was promoted to sergeant. I went back to the road as a sergeant for a couple of years. Left there in 2013, and then I went to the Brookhaven Police Department. I was part of the startup of that department. and came in as a sergeant on the road there as well, and was promoted through the ranks to lieutenant in criminal investigations, and then also as a major over the support services division. While I was at Brookhaven Police Department, there was a committee called the Social Justice, Race, and Equity Commission that I served as a liaison for the police department for the Use of Force and Legitimacy Committee for that committee. And then I left there in 2022 and came here to Austell as the deputy chief. I was recruited brought on over by the former Chief Scott Hamilton, and came in as the deputy chief. And in March 3rd of this year, Chief Hamilton resigned, and I've been appointed as the interim chief.
Okay, great. And can you please introduce your...
Yes, I have my command staff here that fully supports me, that I would not be able to do half the things that I do without them. So I will allow them to introduce themselves, starting with my interim deputy chief.
Good afternoon. My name is Lloyd Garrett. I am the interim deputy chief. I started my law enforcement career in 1989 with Cobb County Police Department and spent the next 30 years with them, and retiring in 2018. After retirement, I went into the private sector for about 5 years and helped build a company. And then after that company was sold, I elected to come back into law enforcement. And in January of 24, I was hired by the Austell Police Department as a patrol captain.
Good afternoon. My name is Shameta Curtis. I am the captain at Austell Police Department over the Support Services and Criminal Investigative Division. I started my career in 2001 in Albany, Georgia. Did approximately 16 and a half years there. After leaving, I came to Atlanta, where I did about 4 years with Clark Atlanta University. And then I too was recruited in September of 2023, where I came over to Austell Police Department as the captain.
Hello everyone, Alfredo Trochet. I'm the Uniform Patrol Captain currently. I have 24 years of law enforcement. I started my career in 2005 with the Austell Police Department. Left for 13 years to Illinois, came back 5 years ago, and just happy to be back. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go back to our panelists. Mr. Austin Thompson.
All right, good morning. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Caribbean Focus TV for the invitation. I am without my support staff this morning, but I will do my best to make my introduction. Austin Thompson, currently serving my first term as city councilman. I am the first man of African descent in the 200-year history of Lawrenceville to be elected to the city council. It's been a great 3.5 years. I'll be running for re-election again, this November. I'm originally from Georgetown, Guyana, South America. A proud immigrant of this country. Made my contributions in engineering for about 20 years, in small business development, advocacy, and coaching and mentoring with entrepreneurs. My background is really diverse because, in the midst of working with entrepreneurs and working on entrepreneurship and small business summits and workshops and panels and engineering and business development, I've also done a lot of mentoring in the community. I've been a community activist for a long time, for almost 35 years. Started in Brooklyn, New York. I lived in New York for 15 years, where I immigrated to prior to relocating to Atlanta, Georgia. So I've got a diverse background in mentoring and community activism and development, in engineering and project management. My love now is, has grown to include public policy and representation of my community as a policymaker. It's really interesting where I've served the community, the Caribbean community, and the Hispanic community, because I've also been a volunteer with the Latin America Association for so many years, working with families, immigrant families, and on services and activities, but now I get to serve my community in a different dynamic, and that is one of a policymaker, being part of the city council, where we set policy and legislation for the city, and be on the seat of representation for the constituents in our city, and I'm happy to be in that role and to facilitate that role and to be a role model for many of the young people who are thinking of embarking on that path to public policy. So thank you again to Caribbean Focus TV, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Kat Hardrick, and again, I would like to say thank you to Caribbean Focus TV for having us here today. Can you hear me? I'm just speak a little louder. Let me speak a little louder. Again, I'm Kat Hardrick, and I am a veteran, and I am an activist, and I've been doing activist work for about when I was in the military, helping female soldiers get their just due. I don't know, it's just something special in my heart about making sure that everyone gets a fair shot at a high quality of life, and it doesn't matter where you come from or what you believe in, you should have that opportunity. And so I've been afforded the voice in doing such that myself and my co-host, Karen Scott Green, we have a community-focused, solution-driven podcast called Conversations with Karen and Kat. And that's where we help elevate individuals, get their voices out so people can understand what situations are and how we collectively as a village can come together with those solutions. And so I do a lot of activism work, a lot of volunteerism with Gwinnett County Police Department, with other nonprofit organizations that help give information to immigrants and letting people know that if a crime has happened to you, you have a voice. And we utilize our resources to make sure people feel heard, seen, and valued. So I am honored to be here today to make sure everyone's voice is heard on the front line. Where you have all these experts here, my expertise comes in with talking to everyday citizens, immigrants who don't have support, who now have support through our platform. Thank you.
Let's show a hand of appreciation for this experience. So y'all ready to dive in? Let's get the questions rolling. And it's gonna go first to Chief Howell. You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so there's a lot of information out here. Some are true, some are false, but we hear them. So my question to you is, how are local law enforcement working with ICE, and how does that impact the community, specifically immigrants?
So that's a misconception because local law enforcement has no affiliation with ICE at all whatsoever. Whatever they execute, their plans, their mission, or what have you, has nothing to do with local law enforcement. Austell in particular, our mission is to serve the community. It's to do partnerships with the community, and that means everyone. Also to educate the community and to build trust with the community as well. So it's very important for me and my command staff specifically that when it comes to, immigrants, that they do trust us. So we're allowed to do our job because we cannot do our job unless we're allowed to do the job by the public and have public trust.
Well, it's great to know that because these information is circulating on the news, and that's why we bring this esteemed immigration special so we can get the right answers, so we can make sure that we are listening and making the right decisions.
Yes, ma'am. A lot of times they don't even inform us if they, whatever their plan of action is. If they come into the community and do something, a lot of times they don't inform us and let us know, so we have no idea.
Is that the ICE?
Correct.
They can come into the community and they do not inform you, and they can go and knock on the door.
Yes, ma'am. If they choose to do so, they will. And there has been times where they have done that.
Okay. Now, does anyone else want to chime in on this?
No, the chief is absolutely correct. ICE is a federal agency. The local police are local state. So no, ICE doesn't take directives from the local police. And if the local police is willing to work with them, they can, but it's up to each individual jurisdiction. So the ICE is not coordinating by and large with local police.
Okay, great.
Yeah. There was a policy 287G that was implemented several years ago, and it would deputize somewhat the police departments to participate in the program of identifying quote-unquote illegals and report them to ICE. But I am very pleased to see many of our police departments are not participating in that, because that the system of profiling is not the way we should be, using our police departments.
Absolutely. And I volunteered on the Gwinnett County Citizens Advisory Board, Gwinnett County Police Department Citizens Advisory Board, and their #1 priority is to make sure that citizens are safe. They're not there to do any immigration law. They're there to make sure that you're safe. So if there is a crime committed against you, you can contact the police. It's their job to serve and protect, not to do ICE's job. So
Yeah.
Correct. Well, you heard that on Caribbean Focus TV. Councilman Austin Thompson, this question is for you.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the most common immigration pathways for Caribbean nationals looking to live or work in the U.S.?
Well, we first say you come through your embassies, you contact your embassies for information on the pathway to citizenship. A lot of companies look for that. Your local consulates, and then you have your Caribbean organizations that provide information for nationals who are looking for employment or any type of opportunity. But these services, and this is why when you look to, let's say, the Guyana Association, the Jamaican Association, the Haitian Association, many of our Caribbean nationals are part of Caribbean associations, and we have information which we use to direct and steer nationals in the right direction for opportunities. Much of the information that we dispense to the community will lead you in the right direction on the proper credentials or what is needed, for you to pursue those pathways.
Okay. Did anyone else want to?
Well, yeah, he's absolutely correct. In terms of the tried and true, and often for Caribbean immigrants, the way into legal status is through family immigration. So you start out with one family member who is a LPR, lawful permanent resident or green card holder, or U.S. citizen, and if you are the son, daughter, spouse of or brother or sister of a U.S. citizen or LPR, that is the most readily used path to legal status here in the United States for Caribbean immigrants.
So it's important for each Caribbean person to get in touch with their Caribbean organization to get more information.
Yes, ma'am. Or local consulates.
Okay, or local consulates. Attorney Jamene Christian.
Yes.
What impact do temporary protective status, TPS, and deferred action for childhood arrival, DACA, have on immigrants?
Well, if you're following the news, and I know it's extremely difficult to do so, and I had to check my phone when I was inside waiting to come on to see if there was any breaking news, because unfortunately it's always changing. For TPS, just to give you a brief rundown on TPS, temporary protected status, and that's when the United States allows people from certain countries, Venezuela, Haiti, Cameroon, many countries around the world, Yemen, to come into Syria, not Yemen, to come into the United States under TPS. And TPS is allowed because there's instability in the person's native home. So they're paroled into the United States. They're allowed to get a work permit, allowed to work lawfully, and to live their lives in the United States. Unfortunately, this new administration has decided that TPS is coming to a close for many people. I think over 500,000 TPS recipients are soon slated to lose their status. And one particular country, I think next month, they will have to leave the United States. But Friday, I believe there was a halt to that. So TPS recipients can take a breath for now. and not having to worry about leaving the United States. So TPS, it serves a great, what's the word? It's a good thing. It's a good thing because you're allowed to take a chance to establish yourself in the United States. And I always say this about TPS, if you are a TPS recipient, it's a good time to realize that perhaps through family immigration, if you fall in love with a US citizen or green card holder, you are here in the United States lawfully. And as long as you are marrying, not to evade immigration law, marry, and then you can start your journey to lawful status. And if you have children, you have US citizen children while you're here with TPS, they can become, in 21 years, they can apply for you when they're 21 years old. As for DACA, he's really not doing anything with DACA. DACA recipients are safe for now, and it's just up in the air.
Okay, so it's on hold.
It's on hold. For some countries, it's on hold. But ironically enough, with South African nationals, they're being afforded TPS status, even though there's not any instability in South Africa at the moment. So it's like a picking and choosing of the immigrant, whatever nation that the immigrant hails from, whether or not their TPS status is going to be blown up.
So they can relax now.
Yes.
However, what will be they're deciding on either suspending the administration ruling, or are they going to delay them?
Well, as of Friday, it's delayed. Everything is delayed, like the tariffs. Everything is delayed. So unfortunately for TPS, and it was the TPS recipients in Ohio when they were talking about eating cats and dogs. So they were literally in the United States lawfully on TPS status, and recruited to that Ohio town because the people of Ohio didn't want to do those particular jobs. So that's a TPS recipient. So for now, for certain countries, not all, it is suspended or delayed. And for some, no, it's in 2 months or so, in a month or so, you have to leave the United States.
And it was the Haitians that they were discussing in Ohio.
Yes, the Haitian population, yes.
Did anyone else want to chime in?
Springfield.
Yes, Springfield, Ohio.
Did anyone else want to chime in? Okay. Okay, your turn.
Okay.
What rights do Caribbean immigrants, documented or undocumented, have when interacting with immigration authorities?
What rights do they have?
Yes, what rights
Well,
do
they have the same with DACA, or are you talking about the regular?
just immigrants, or documented and
Yeah,
non-documented?
so when you're dealing with the law enforcement that we have right now, they have the same rights. They're there to just protect them. So again, you're not going to take them like DACA. You know, they have the same exact rights. You still have to follow the law. You still get pulled over. You still going to ask your questions and whatnot. But they have the right to be protected and safe. And what I find is a lot of individuals that are immigrants, they don't report the crimes because they're afraid of mistreatment. They're afraid of being identified, singled out, predatory, or what word am I looking for when you single someone out and you just try to
Profile.
Profile. I love the village. I love the village. And they're being profiled. And therefore they don't. And what I see people coming to me saying, Kat, I can't even go to the grocery store because I'm being bullied or targeted. And they don't want to report that to the police. But they are going to be treated the same way as every other citizen if a crime is being placed on them. So yes, if you're here, you still need to follow the law while you're waiting on getting your documentation to be a legalized citizen in this country. But when you are an immigrant and you engage with law enforcement, you should be expected to be treated just like every other citizen. And if you're not, you still have the right to report that. Like Councilman said, go to those agencies from your Caribbean communities. Go to those agencies and seek out support so that you can get the proper way how to report this. If you feel alone or if you feel like it's systemic, if you report on one officer, you might get retaliation from another officer. Go to these organizations that can help navigate that space with you. So because you're not alone. And that is what defeats us, feeling like we're alone and you don't have that support, because that fear will prevent you from making the proper reports that you need to do. So if I'm not mistaken, you should be treated like a human being.
Right. And you mentioned that they should probably, if they need assistance, go to their Caribbean Association,
Yes.
law enforcement, and to get support.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
You mentioned crime,
Yes.
that they do not report crime,
Yes, ma'am.
which is a serious problem. And I want to turn this to you about VAWA,
Right.
which is similar. So can you explain VAWA?
Okay, VAWA is the Violence Against Women's Act, and I represent a lot of, unfortunately, but fortunately, I represent a lot of VAWA clients. You make use of VAWA when you are an immigrant, you come to the United States on either a fiance visa, marriage visa, and it's not just between husband and wife. You can have abusers, victim, mother, child, father. It doesn't have to be just husband and wife, but typically you think of it that way. The immigrant comes to the United States, thinks they're in the best marriage in the world, but unfortunately the United States citizen spouse becomes an abuser. And they use immigrant abuse. What is immigrant abuse? Okay, I'm going to destroy your documents. I'm going to take your passport. I am not going to let you know when USCIS has sent an interview letter saying you're ready for your interview. And then also, that's immigrant abuse. And then you have the everyday domestic violence. And these immigrants are unfortunately afraid, terrified. They have no status in the United States, afraid to report to the local authority, and they're literally at the mercy of their abuser spouse. USCIS, through Congress, has decided that that's not a good thing. So you can file a VAWA petition without the support and help of your US citizen or LPR abuser. The US citizen does not have to know. You can use an attorney, you can do it yourself, you get a safe mailing address, documents come to your attorney, it comes to your safe, it could be a neighbor, family member, and you're allowed to apply for your green card on your own. You do not need to have your US citizen spouse or abuser assist you in that process. So VAWA is a very good thing. And it takes a long time, about 3 years or so, for the application to have a decision made, but you are in you don't have legal status while it's pending, but you're kind of in a safe zone. And at the end of the day, you go to your green card interview. If you're interviewed, sometimes they do not, and you get your 10-year card in the mail, and you're able to start to live your life in the United States away from your abuser.
So under VAWA, even though it's violence against women, men are protected.
Absolutely.
Under VAWA.
Mothers, sons. If you have to have the qualifying factor, you have to have a U.S. citizen or LPR abuser. And if you are the son, the daughter, parent of an abuser or spouse of an abuser, you can make use of VAWA. And yes, Dawnette is absolutely correct. It does, even though it says VAWA, violence against women, you can just put an M in there as well. Right. It's available to men also to make use of.
Okay, great. Now I'm just going to open, this question is, you can just dive in. How should someone respond when they are approached by ICE if they come to their house?
So I would tell anyone, I mean, for me personally, if a stranger comes knocking at my door, I'm not going to answer the door.
Right.
And so I would encourage you to not answer the door if you do not know who it is. If you need verification of their status or who they are, then pick up the phone, call 911, and we can come out and we can facilitate that. We can help you identify that person and to make sure that you're safe, because you have to remember too, going back to the not reporting, your silence makes you a victim. Makes you more inclined to be a victim. And I always say that anyone in the United States, whether you are an immigrant or whether you're here as a US citizen, your rights end when you infringe on somebody else's rights. Okay, so enforcement of state, local, federal laws, Constitution, all of that, you have the right to all of that. And so we cannot protect you if you do not notify us. And then that's going to make people more inclined to feel more comfortable to commit crimes against you, because they know that you're not going to report. And it makes it hard for us to be able to protect if we don't have the knowledge of where the crime is occurring, when it's occurring, how it's occurring, for us to be able to educate you to how to protect yourself.
In a lot of cases, too, from what I've been seeing, ICE doesn't just approach you in a general manner. sometimes they're bursting out of a vehicle and coming at you. They're bursting into schools, churches, whatever, So, and in many cases, they're in masks. So, is this the immigration, police, enforcement, or, it could have some sort of other, connotation, but with the rapidity at which those operatives are coming at you, it's best to just, allow them to, take you into custody or whatever, rather than fighting back, which can escalate into something even worse and serious. Because I know I've had this question before, and requests for communication with an attorney or a family member or a representative, because the last thing you want to do when they're coming at you to remove you from wherever they're taking you from, and it might not be in the most pleasant manner, so it's best to just surrender and allow them to take you into custody, and then request for whatever type of phone call or communication that you can have, because it's not really pleasant. It's not pleasing. I mean, I've never not gone through it myself personally, but I've seen this in news reportings, and it looks like a militia just bursting and trying to apprehend someone or kidnap someone. But it has been likened to kidnapping, But the manner in which they're doing it is not gentle, it's not pleasing, it's inhumane, and sometimes you just got to allow yourself to be taken into custody, because it can be turned into something more serious.
Well, I will just add, as a caveat to that, there's a difference between ICE approaching you in public versus coming to your home.
Yeah.
So if an ICE agent is knocking on your door, you do have options. The first option, who are you? Well, I'm ICE. I'm here to see Jamene Christian. Where's the warrant? They have
behind closed door, right?
Yeah,
Don't open the door.
You're not opening this door. You're not opening the door. You're having this conversation behind the closed door, and you want to see the judicial warrant, not any old warrant, signed by a judge, right? Warrants are signed by a judge, but it has to be a judge who works in immigration, so to speak. The door, you ask the warrant to be placed underneath the door. You inspect the warrant. If your name is not on the warrant, or if they refuse to put the warrant underneath the door, there's probably no warrant, and they don't have a right to be there. But once you open the door and allow them in, as we know, probable cause, they can look around, whatever's in plain sight, begin to ask questions, you open yourself up. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. You don't fight it, because clients ask, okay, so they're demanding to come in. What if they start to break down the door? And it has happened. I say you let them in. You're not going to win by escalating.
Yeah.
You let them in, but you can choose to remain silent. You do not have to answer any questions. If it's safe to do so, take pictures of the agents, get their names. We know that they are masked, they are covered, so that is hard to do. Have someone record on your behalf, but you do not have to let them in. Do not let them in. If they certainly do not have a warrant to come into your home, they will probably come back another day with a warrant, and then that's another conversation. But you will have the opportunity to speak with an attorney and try to protect yourself that way. If you're in the street and ICE is approaching you, 9 out of 10 times you have been identified. It's not random. ICE is not roaming the streets of Atlanta saying you look like an immigrant. You look like you don't belong here. 9 out of 10 times there is a warrant. They're coming for you. They know who you are. That's why they have the bravado, because they know they got their guy or their gal. And they swiftly remove them from the street because they don't want the chaos and people getting involved in the situation. And then that's when you're unfortunately taken from Atlanta, where there are many immigration attorneys, your support system, and you're shipped down to Lumpkin County, Georgia, where you have no support. Immigration attorneys my colleagues have to get in cars and say, hey, you're going down to Lumpkin today? Yeah, come with me. I have a client there. It is difficult. So this is purposeful. You have people taken to Louisiana from New York. You had Columbia, a student taken from New York City, skipped over many detention centers, taken to Louisiana. That's intentional to make it difficult, because the end game is, will you self-deport? If you kind of lose hope. Your family members can't visit you. It's hard to get an attorney. A lot of ICE detention no longer is allowing for video links and video consultations with your attorney. So you're just sitting there and you're languishing. And then they come to you and say, do you think you should leave? And you give up. People give up, and they do leave. So that's intentional. That's intentional. So when you say, why are they in Louisiana when they were arrested in New York. And then you will go from New York to Texas to Louisiana. It's just to break you down, so to speak, to break you down and to leave.
That's so, I'm on the panel and that's just, it just breaks my heart to hear that.
It's intentional.
And, because I agree, you're at home, dial 911 and keep 911 on the phone until somebody comes before they come into your home.
And have
so
a
you
plan.
can have some protection.
You should have a plan.
But when you're saying that they get picked up and you can take me to a whole nother state, what next? Right. Yeah, I'm literally just a gate. What next? Seriously, what next? Because I know we're saying get help, get support, but dude, if I don't have it, I don't know an attorney's number. I don't know. We all have phones. Who knows their family's information?
And that's the plan, if you don't mind.
No, let's have it. Yes.
That's why you should have it. If you are here undocumented, now I would even say documented.
Yeah,
in the last few weeks, the last few months, even if you're documented, especially if you are a green card holder, visas, that's a whole nother story because they're using the Alien Enemies Act to go and kind of inroad around that. But you have an immigration plan. We don't know numbers. I don't know my daughter's cell phone number. Learn your numbers. If you're an immigrant, undocumented, learn your a contact person's number. Have a legal plan. Like, what if your child is sick? Give someone authority. If you're going to be detained at ICE, give someone authority to work on your behalf, a power of attorney, your bank account, your safety deposit box. Because 9 out of 10 times you will probably be deported. So you have to have an immigration plan. You have to have a strategy and have money set aside for an immigration attorney or bond, and make a plan and share it with a close friend so they can know what to do. And there's an ICE, you can go on and see where your family member is. There's a website, ice.gov, and don't quote me on that. And you can see if a family member, if they don't return home, you can run their name in the system and they can tell you, yes, they're in ICE custody and this is where they're located.
Councilman?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. For the attorney, ma'am, you brought up self-deportation, right? Does the person who has been apprehended have a choice? If you're asking me, do I want to self-deport? Can I say, okay, I'll self-deport, but I want to be deported here? Because now they're sending you to El Salvador, to an undesirable camp location. If they're asking you that question, do you have the choice? Like say for instance, they're picking me up and they're asking me, you want to self-deport? Send me to Guyana.
Right. Well, no, normally speaking, because think about it, do you have a right as a non-citizen of a country just to appear at their border? So you have to be deported 9 out of 10 times. El Salvador, this is all new, but there's a contract between the government and the government of El Salvador in the United States. I think it's $6 million to house. So that's sort of something else. But generally speaking, you're self-deported to your home country because I can't say, oh, I want to go to Paris. I was living in the United States and self-deport me to Paris. France, rather, I should say France. France doesn't want you either. So you do go to your home country if you decide, I want to go home. I want to leave, rather.
Okay. And you mentioned have a plan. So a plan should have an immigration attorney.
You should have one on
your cell phone. A plan should be contact your Caribbean association or your respective association. I know I work a lot with the Bahamas. I'm Jamaican, but I work a lot with the Bahamas Association, and every time I'm there, someone is always calling. They had to go to North Carolina to pick up someone. So it is important that you know who your affiliation is with your Caribbean Association.
Yes.
Does everyone understand what self-deportation means? Can you explain self-deportation?
Yeah, well, it can be called, the legal terminology is voluntary departure. So if you are ordered removed from the United States prior to this new action, you are entitled to due process. Unfortunately, it's not happening. And if it was going the normal route, like it did prior to 100 days or the 100 days before, you would have your right to go into immigration court, IG court right here on Ted Turner Drive in Atlanta, appear before an immigration judge. And if the cards are stacked against you, and normally it is, because immigrants who do not have lawyers at their removal hearings are 99.9% likely to be ordered removed. So it is in your favor to stop that process and agree to voluntarily leave the United States. And you're kind of rewarded when you do, because think about it, they're not spending, the US government, taxpayers, we're not spending for airline tickets. We're saving resources, so you don't have to have the government's attorneys come and make that case. And so you're clearing the docket. So when you voluntarily depart or self-deport, you're not banned as long from the United States if you are ordered removed. And it's probably a good thing if you really know you have no legal status, because it allows you to go home and start again. Not enter illegally when I say start again, but get your life in order, get your affairs in order, and find a legal path into the United States. The term self-deport is kind of a new terminology that immigration attorneys are using since Trump's 2.0 administration, where the thought process is, if we wear you down, if we remove you from your support system, you'll throw in the towel, give up, and say, I want to leave. I don't want to fight.
And deportation happens all the time.
Oh, it happens under I think Obama had one of the highest deportation rates in a while. And this is a Democrat president. What we're just seeing here is an onslaught of media. It's in your face every day.
Right.
But and like you said, Councilman, it's the aggressiveness of it all when we see it captured on TV. But deportation, I mean, yeah, we are a country of law and order. We have rules, and I understand that. But it's the fury and the way it's being done. It's not being done in a humane way, not at all.
What options do family have if they have been separated for immigration issues?
Well, I know our consulates are in place for a reason. It's not just to process passports, right? And it's not just to manage naturalization papers and green cards and so on and so forth. But they're also there for these types of reasons, right? If the separation happen, if these egregious injustices happen on these individuals. So they will help, because the consulates are in touch with immigration attorneys, immigration officials, and those who can really help to, with the process. So getting involved with your consular, either your consul general or your consulate. If you happen to have a consulate, we don't. As far as Guyana, we don't have a consulate here in Georgia. We have a consulate in New York, so we have an honorary consul here. Jamaica has an honorary consul right here. I think Haiti has a consul general here. Jamaica's consul general is in Miami, right?
Yes.
And so you get in touch with your local government official. That's usually the first place to begin, because there's a trusted connection there, and allow that individual to really assist you and work along with you in making the other connections that you need.
Okay. Anyone else want to?
And the other agencies that he's already mentioned, to collaborate with them so you can get in contact with attorneys and so forth, because I feel like a lot of people just don't know that how much these agencies really can help you. So definitely connect with them, get with other advocate agencies, talk to your local leaders, and find out how you can get that ball moving, because you're not by yourself. But a lot of people just need to plug into those organizations because they do a lot.
And also, if you don't have, if you're from a country and you don't have immediate representation, contact a consul general from another country. They can help you, because they work in a network. Here we have a consular corps of Georgia, and it's an organization with all of the consulates who come together and they network, lessons learned, and they participate in different initiatives and activities. If you don't have a representative here, get in contact with a consulate from another country and they can help you, and that's the way it has to be.
In today's time, with this administration, if a Caribbean or immigrant want to bring a family member from their country, what is the process now, or is that something that you recommend? Y'all looking at.
Okay, I'll take the bait.
Let the attorney take the lead.
Like I tell people,
I saw that look.
I tell prospective clients every day, USCIS is still open,
Okay.
you know, and that's a good thing. The new administration has not taken, DOGE didn't come in and take away USCIS. They are still processing applications. The fees have gone up since April of 2024, but that was not under Trump, so we can't say Trump did that. You can still, if you are eligible for an immigration benefit, shut out the noise, shut out the media, and apply. You know, don't wait. So if you have a family member, if you have a U.S. citizen child, and your child will soon be 21 years of age, wait for that 21st birthday and go ahead. File the I-130, that's the immigration petition for an alien relative. If you are married to a U.S. citizen, if you are here undocumented, and a lot of people don't realize this, if you are married to a U.S. citizen, all of your undocumentedness, making up a word, is forgiven. So you can work, if you have worked in the past without authorization, if you entered the country unlawfully, and that makes you undocumented, that's forgiven. You can go ahead and apply. The only caveat to that is, if you entered unlawfully and you marry a U.S. citizen, you have to leave the United States and consular process back in your home country, and then you are allowed to come back in. But if you entered on a student visa and you accrued unlawful status, overstayed, and you meet and fall in love with a U.S. citizen, you're going to go ahead and apply and adjust status, file the I-485, and remain in the United States while your petition is being processed. So yes, USCIS is still open, and you can still naturalize. File that N-400 if you are eligible. And I tell people to do it.
You mentioned expired visa. What should someone do if they're not in a relationship and they have an expired student visa, work visa, any type of visa that expired?
You are undocumented, and that's not good. As an immigration attorney, this is counterproductive, counterintuitive, and they arrested a judge just yesterday in Wisconsin. But I will say this, stay under the radar. You are out of status. So you do not apply. And there was a time when you can go ahead and say, oh, I don't need an immigration attorney. I can do this on my own. This is not the world in which to do that now. Speak with, it might cost you a couple of $100 or so, could be free. Speak with an immigration attorney, find out your eligibility. And if you have an expired student visa, you are out of status and you are open for deportation. You are out there. So stay under the radar, wait for policies to change. You might meet and fall in love with an American.
Okay, I have another question for the attorney. This is again, in the news, I watched the news. In the news, they talked about suspending Social Security numbers and revoking visas. Has that taken effect, or is that still chatter?
No, I'm not familiar with the suspension of Social Security numbers for people who receive them.
TPS.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, if you are removed from the United States, it's not a functioning Social Security number, so you can't work with it. And so from that perspective, you're gone. So the Social Security number is not an operable Social Security number. But when I hear you say that, Dawnette, I think about birthright citizenship. I mean, that's like the big one that, and I don't know if you were going to address that, but I know okay. Birthright citizenship. We have the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment. Those amendments came about because of the enslavement of people of African descent. 13th Amendment, freedom. 14th Amendment, U.S. citizenship. If you were born here in the United States, 15th Amendment, you can vote if you are a citizen. Amendments are very difficult to upend. So I tell people, well, I was saying that prior to a month ago, I would, without blink, say, don't worry about it. We're not getting rid of, they can't get rid of birthright citizenship. However, it seems as if the Trump administration is trying to find a way to go around, circumvent the Constitution and have a birthright citizenship repealed. But the thing about it is there are steps to it. If you are born in the United States, you are a natural. You are a United States citizen until you die. If you are naturalized, what they might try to do is go into your naturalization application and look for fraud, look for misrepresentation, and you can become denaturalized. So you are no longer a U.S. citizen, but that's not birthright. So the title is kind of like a misnomer. So I say this: if you were born here in the United States, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, U.S. territories, Guam, you are a U.S. citizen. Do not fear. Do not fear.
Okay. Heading back to you again. Birthright citizenship. You have an adult, non-U.S. citizen, immigrant, but they have a child that's born here, that's not of age yet.
That's where the Trump administration, a very good question, is trying to take away birthright citizenship, because he's piggybacking, kind of grandfathering it to see the status of the parent. But then again, you fall back to that 14th Amendment that says, if you were born here in the United States, doesn't matter the status, because when you think about it, that amendment was born, pardon the pun, out of enslaved people. You're no longer an enslaved person. What are you? Oh, we're going to make them citizens. You were born here. So they had no status. So if you thought about it, well, their parents weren't U.S. citizens, because prior to the 14th Amendment, they weren't citizens either. And children born since the passing of the 14th Amendment became U.S. citizens. So when you think about it that way, it's hard to do. The only way that can happen, if you have an undocumented parent and you're born here, it would have to be, I think there are 26 amendments, and don't quote me on that, there would have to be a 27th saying that we're going to do it this way. And I even think with Trump's attempt, he is cutting it out and parsing it and saying, if you have at least one parent who's documented or birthright citizen, you won't lose your citizenship status if you were born here. If your parent was here lawfully, say on a visa, and you were born in the United States, you're protected. So you have to kind of weed through. It's not everyone in the ship and it's going down.
So then my takeaway is for them to always have an immigration attorney for their respective country's consulate on numbers on hand.
And even if it's not, you go to any one of those consulates and get some help.
Right. Right. Anyone else want to comment on birthright?
We were talking about it earlier, and I know you said don't be afraid and everything, but when we were saying you got three branches of government. And when we have people who are not standing up to the administration, and like you said, we're all hanging in the balance right now. We don't know. It seems to be a lot of things that we thought would never happen is happening. So it's very imperative that everybody make sure you have these numbers, make a plan, know what you need to do in the event something negative really does blow up in our faces. And I don't want to be the pessimistic one, but I mean, we are seeing things that we've never seen before.
It's a constitutional crisis without being labeled. Because we have three co-equal branches of government.
Yes.
And you have the legislative, which is Congress, the judicial, the Supreme Court, and the executive, the president. The president can sign executive orders, but the executive orders cannot upend Congress's job.
That's right.
And the Supreme Court can't do Congress's job. So people are saying, well, perhaps the administration will use the Supreme Court because it's heavily conservative to upend birthright citizenship. No, because we still, for now, have co-equal branches of government. Can't use the Supreme Court to do that. It has to go through Congress, through an amendment.
When you running for judge?
I love immigration law. I really do. I love practicing immigration law.
Move on to the next question. Again, in the news, I watch the news a lot. There were a company that he was harboring a lot of undocumented immigrants, and he got busted. Okay, so my question is, how can undocumented Caribbean or any immigrant protect themselves from workplace exploitation? I'm looking at you.
Yeah, that's a good, I don't know. I'm saying this because being an advocate, and I know people, and I know a particular company that rises, and I don't know if we're talking about the same one, but it's someone that we actually know in the streets. When we say in the streets, out here fighting for citizens, they had a job, and everyone there were immigrants. And this is a true story for a citizen. And a lot of people were getting hurt on the job. But because they were undocumented, they didn't report it. Mm-hmm. And so my biggest issue is we punish the people who are trying to live, but these corporations get away with millions upon millions of dollars on the backs of people who are just trying to feed their family. And they don't report the crimes of these corporations that are doing this to them. And so this person that I know is an American citizen, and they thought he was an immigrant. And when he started talking the language, then things shifted. So the power of knowing your rights is very powerful. You have more power in you than you know. Do not let this term immigrant, undocumented, demoralize you, dehuman you. You're still a human being and deserve to be treated with respect. And I'll leave it at that. Report they behind.
May I? Yeah, and to piggyback on that, and we were discussing this, and the U visa, right?
Yes.
The U visa. That's a visa if you're undocumented, and when you talk about you being exploited at work, that's a crime, right? And exploitation can go from A to Z, right? If you are being exploited, if you're being trafficked, anything of that nature, and you are undocumented, you can work with local law enforcement and apply for a U visa. That U visa will allow you, because what you're doing is you're helping law enforcement to stop this crime. And it could be RICO, right? Sexual, you could speak to that, Chief. And it puts you on a path to getting a green card. Takes 3 years or so, and you can actually get a green card. It's kind of like VAWA, where you self-petition for yourself, because Congress recognized that it's called immigrant abuse. People take advantage of people who are undocumented because you're afraid to report. So you can work with local law enforcement. Just remember that U visa, Google it. It's real. It hasn't been taken away. And if you work with law enforcement, and they will have to sign a form and say that this person is working with us to apprehend this criminal or this criminal enterprise, you can be afforded a green card. Okay. So that's how you kind of protect yourself when you have employers who are taking advantage, because I'm quite sure law enforcement would like to know. Okay.
Yeah.
And from the law enforcement end, the important thing is to make sure that you cooperate with the investigation and that you work with us. Because if you don't answer the phone and you try to dodge us when we're trying to do the investigation, then we will not sign the U visa. Exploitation is a big deal here in the country, not just for immigrants, but just across the board. And so we do training yearly. So we know the signs to look for when it comes to that. But it goes back to what you said, and what we've been saying is that you have to report it. And you need to have a relationship with your local law enforcement. And we will act. It doesn't matter what your status is. We don't ask because we don't care what your status is. We will act because we're going to uphold the Constitution and the laws.
And they do. Local law enforcement here in the Atlanta Metro, very good with working with U visa applicants.
So undocumented immigrants they do have some legal repercussions or recourses if they go to the police station and report.
Yes, if they're being exploited at work absolutely.
We're gonna open up the questions to the audience, but I have one more if you don't mind, one more. Okay, and this is again to anyone. How can Caribbean nationals advocate for better immigration policies that impact their communities?
Go downtown. Yes, to the Capitol. Speak to. So everybody needs to go to the Secretary of State is my voter page, mvp.sos.ga.gov. If you are a citizen, go to that website, put in and fill in the questions. It's going to ask some information. You find out who represents you from city council, from your mayoral city council to the commissioners, you know, the chairwomen or chairmen and the commissioners all the way up to your state house reps, senators, please, it is called the People's House for a reason. That gold dome that we see on 20, that's your house. Go to that house, contact, email, get with your organizations. They can help you craft the right verbiage so that you can advocate for policies for you. And it's a group of us, we're always down there. The word lobbyist is nothing more than somebody that's going to keep going and going and going until they get what they want. Don't let these terms frighten you. We're lobbyists. Lobby for what's best for you and your family, because no one else is going to do it. And who better than us who are on this side suffering, right? So you have a panel of individuals right here and these organizations that's out in the audience. Partner with them and find out, how can I do this? First, identify what your problem is. A lot of times we don't know. So this is why we need these forums where you can identify where we are having these issues. And then you work with individuals to find out the proper terms. What language do you need to craft up what policy? What does that look like? And then who do you need to champion to help you get it in front of the people who need to read it, who can then implement those things? Session is what, January?
January to March.
January to March.
End of March.
And they're in the council, and you go up there and you see them. And prior to that, you email, I don't even know, do we fax anymore? Look, Look, the Gen Z will say, what is that? You know, but reach out to them. Effective communication, and listen. The squeaky wheel does what? Get the oil. And that's what we have to do. A village, you have all this information, chime in, but we can't do it without the people who it's mostly impacted.
Right.
And you know, local officials are there for a reason, and they're there for you to engage. You know, say all politics is local. So rather than reaching out to someone on the federal level, like a U.S. senator or a U.S. representative, get in contact, as Ms. Hardrick said, with one of your local officials. You can contact your city council member, right? Your county commissioner, and they will put you in touch with the right representative. The representatives, the state representatives and state senators have those connections, and they have those connections with consulates, with attorneys, and they can definitely put you in contact with the right person. I have received some of those calls, so I know, you know, when they come to me, Councilman Thompson, we have this issue. We need assistance with such and such and such. I've had it with the Eritrean community. I've had it with the Somali community. I've had it with the South African gentleman who just went back to South Africa not too long ago. I had it with the Guyanese community. And what we do is we work with our state representatives who have these connections in order to, you know, get you the services that you need. But you have to reach out. You know, I also want to say, you know, in general, people migrate to the United States not to commit crime.
Right.
You don't come in to commit crime. Their families were coming from developing countries which have been underdeveloped for so many years, for decades. Coming to America or to England or to Canada is to start over again, to find good jobs, good education for children. This is really the mindset of a migrant. They're coming here to find jobs so they can create better lives for their families. They're not coming here to commit crimes. Yeah, is there a bad apple or two that comes in? Sure, right? But not all immigrants are committing crimes. You have folks who are born right here committing crimes. That's right. Right? But the whole thing is to demonize the immigrant and to devalue the immigrant, and that is the agenda, and that's what we're seeing. Many of these families are also escaping from countries where there's complete turmoil, right? So coming to America or any other developed country is for a desire to restart and to create a better life, you know. But they just need the services, and they just need to, when you come, if you're coming illegally, find a pathway to becoming a citizen. If you're coming through a green card, eventually, you know, get your citizenship. When I immigrated here, it was myself and my eldest sister. We came in '77 from Guyana. Within 5 years, we were getting our citizenship. Create a pathway to citizenship, become a citizen, and contribute to the development of the country. But in a nutshell, immigrants are not here. You look at the farms, the manufacturing plants that are struggling right now.
Construction.
In the housing development. You know, they can't get houses built as fast, you know, in the rate that they were getting houses built. Farmers are struggling, not only because of funding that's not going to them anymore, but there's nobody on the farms to really do the work, you know. So folks are here to build a life for themselves, you know. But you're going to take one bad apple, two bad apples to demonize the entire population. And that's not the case, you know.
Amen.
Yeah.
Man, and you said so much, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything you said. But I just want to say, in terms of demonization, language is so important. When you start to call undocumented immigrants criminals, savages, animals, terrorists, that's the dehumanization process. And when you make a person an unperson, it's easier to take away their due process rights, right? So, hey, put them on a plane. You have a tattoo? Get out of here. And so this is all intentional. It's intentional. So I always say, look at language and kind of look from a reasonable headspace and say, these are hardworking people. My husband is an immigrant. I have children who are born to, you know, they say most people have an immigrant parent, right? Most US citizens a lot of US citizens have immigrant parents. Immigrants have always helped to build the United States and will continue to do so. Think about it, when we talk about the Caribbean community, it wasn't until 1965 when the United States realized that we needed workers and opened up immigration to people in the Caribbean and in the African nations. So America is aware of the fact that immigrants do indeed build the United States, even other countries, the UK, the Windward, and we have our magistrate out here in the audience, the Windward men who came to the UK and helped to build the United Kingdom, and they came from the Caribbean nations. So immigrants are building the modern world, and they're leaving because unfortunately their countries were destabilized by the modern world. So that's why they're coming here and it's always been the bedrock of the United States, the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, you're poor, you're weak.
Right.
It's not give me your doctors, your lawyers, and your engineers.
Or your millionaires.
Or your millionaires when you get this new gold card, right? So yeah, it's tragic what we're seeing now, and hopefully, you know, life is a pendulum, and we'll get back to normalness. But immigrants are your neighbors, they're your cousins, they're your grandparents.
They're our village.
And no one wants to live next door to a savage or terrorist, and that's why these terms are used. So that's why language is so important. Rewire your mind. When you hear these terms, say that's the purposeful act of trying to dehumanize a person so that I can say, yeah, we don't need terrorists. No one wants a terrorist, and they're going to their local playground. So be careful with language.
Amen.
Right. Okay. Well, this is the time for questioning, but before we go to question, I want to thank the sponsors. We have Brick Law Firm and Kid Quest Early Learning Center. Thank you. And Jacques, we can't. Thank you for this platform. Thank you for providing this platform.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And Rose, his wife. Yes. Thank you for all the support. And we're not going to mention the kids, so. Okay, so we want to have a last word, but I want to open up to questions first so we can get the audience participation. Anyone have any questions?
I'm Kathleen, and I'm going to read, I came with a friend who had to leave, and I'm going to read her question. Actually, I've kind of consolidated them. Her name is Deanna. She said she's an illegal immigrant from Mexico City, and she's been living here since she was 17. She's 40 now, so it's 23 years.
Wow.
Her attorneys have told her that the only way is through manage. Does that sound? That's what it looks like to me, manage.
Marriage, probably.
Oh, marriage, yeah. Says, which she don't know that's true. She says her mother came to the States about 25 years ago and got hers through asylum. And she wonders if she has a chance like hers. It's difficult to find answers. She feels like she's been depleted of any options. And she says the lawyers have told her many things and made promises they can't fulfill. I don't know who her lawyer is. Her second question is, she has another situation. Her only son is in jail. He was not born here. He's 16 years old. He's been held in juvenile for 3 weeks. He's been charged with armed robbery and aggravated assault. He is an illegal immigrant. She says she can't even get a case number on him at this point. He's at risk. She wants to know if he is at risk of being deported, even though he's a minor. And is there a good lawyer that might be able to help? And then she.
Well, that's heavy. She's dealing with a lot of cons, and I don't mean in terms of the pros versus cons. And it is sad, and that's the typical case, and I can understand why you would not want to be in the room while that is being read. So many things here. Be careful when you're speaking with an attorney. You have a lot of notorios out there who will pretend to be attorneys, and I'm not saying that she spoke with notorios, but as an immigrant, any immigrant, undocumented immigrant, that's just something I wanted to remind people of. Everyone who says they're an attorney is not an attorney. You could go and check individual state bars, georgiabar.org, Connecticut, and find out if someone's an attorney. But unfortunately, based on what I know from what you just shared, her pros are limited. They really are. And the attorneys who are telling her that there's probably not much they can do for her are probably correct without me knowing the specifics of her case. And just think about it, in the Trump administration 2.0, there's really, if you came undocumented and there's no pathway through DACA because you have to be a certain age, DACA, you can't even apply for DACA any longer. They're not being adjudicated, those petitions. You can submit, but they're not being adjudicated. So that window is shut. And you have to have good moral character. So even like when you talk about the son, in terms of, yes, he can be deported. He can absolutely be deported. And if he's convicted of his crime, he will be on the next thing out of here. And we think about the Lake and Riley Act, and I know that the law enforcement is aware of that. Just the mere fact of being accused of a crime, you can find yourself in expedited removal proceedings. So unfortunately for your friend, there is really not much. That's why I'm not surprised that an attorney said to her, marriage. But it has to be a legitimate good faith. You can't just marry because that's illegal for an immigration benefit. But being here long enough, and people always say, well, can I marry for an immigration benefit? You absolutely can, but it can't be the primary reason. So if you meet two people, you have two suitors, one is a US citizen and one is not, and they have all the same qualities, go with the US citizen. And like I said, all of the illegal activity is forgiven, and you can adjust status.
Would marriage afford her son any protection?
Well, there's this area of law called promulgation law. Promulgation law, when you take criminal law and combine it with immigration law. I'm not a criminal attorney, but based on immigration law, criminals are not really highly valued in the immigration system, and especially aggravated. And you can speak to that, Chief.
Right, especially with the new House bill that's been passed in particular. If you commit a crime and you end up at the jail, they have to report according to the new House bill. Now, we're not required to do that, but if we send you to the jail, to the county jail, then yes, you will be reported if you're undocumented.
And I have one more question. She had talked about, they had told her if her son went in the Army, that he would be protected. I don't know if that's true.
That's a misnomer, and if it were ever true, that was probably in the 70s. And I have family members from my husband's side who used the military to legalize their status. But now you have to have documented status to join the military. Yeah, not any longer. It's not no longer a path to citizenship or green card and then citizenship.
Or to avoid going to jail. A lot of people will do that to try to avoid going to jail, but that's not it either. Yeah, like you said, that was way
I've had
before,
family
way
members.
under the scope now. People paying attention to that now. You have to be clean.
You have to have
buttoned
documented
up.
status.
Yeah. You can't have anything negative.
We have another question in the audience.
Yeah, I just want to ask, now, if you have a relative and his status, the person's status is at, what you call it? Let me look at my phone. It's, he's at NVC.
NVC, National
Yes.
Visa Center?
The National Visa Center. And I think they're saying that, when they went online, right, it was showing that he was supposed to be waiting for them to send him some information. And so they weren't able to do anything. So when they went back in, everything was just erased.
It was erased?
Well, there's no, apparently they can't get back in.
Oh.
So I was wondering if the NBC has closed its online, because they can't get in.
Okay, well, the National Visa Center is the next step when you're applying for an immigrant, a green card, so to speak, or an immigrant visa. So the fact that it's at NVC, that informs me that the original petition was approved.
Yes.
Right, it was approved. So the National Visa Center, they process the paperwork to get the foreign national ready for their interview back
For
in
the
their
interview,
right,
yes.
back in their home country. So say at the embassy in Kingston, Jamaica, before you get that interview scheduled, you have to have all your documents and immigrant fees paid into the National Visa Center. The fact that they went back in and they can't find, there are a lot of, that could be a temporary thing. I don't know if because the system will crash. So I don't know if this is an ongoing thing or if it happened, they looked on Friday and they couldn't find their information and they're panicking, and I would panic too. Is it that sort of thing when they just look temporarily?
Yes.
Well, try again, keep trying.
Okay.
And if that's not successful, you can write a letter using the case number and you can send it to Portsmouth. It's in New Hampshire, and say, this is my case number. This is what's happening. I don't see my file. The only other thing I would say is if you don't go into your account after a year, they can administratively close out your petition. So you can lose your fees, and more than that, you can lose your space in the queue and start all over and have to start all over again. So that I don't have enough information. So it can be a lot of things, but it's something that you don't sleep on. They should definitely reach out. And when you said reaching out to political elected officials, I know Senator Warnock's office, and if I tell the liaison's name, they'll be mad at me, so I'm not going to tell the liaison's name. But they work with the immigrant community, and they will write a letter on your behalf if there's something going on at USCIS and your case is not processing. And it's a liaison, it's an immigration liaison, and most elected officials on the federal level, so your congressperson and your senator, your federal senator, not state senators, will write a letter on your behalf and send it to USCIS, and that'll kind of prod them to get them moving. So you can have that happen as well, have them write a letter to one of the elected officials, Senator Warnock's office, say, I would like to have the contact information for the liaison officer, and because I can't see my information on CAEC and for the NBC, yeah.
Okay. I was wondering if that, because I was wondering if that person has to have a lawyer to look into that, so.
Well, you can start, you don't have to hire a lawyer to do that.
But you're saying you.
But I mean, obviously, having a lawyer, we know what to do. We know who to reach out to.
Okay.
And when you get a letter from a lawyer on a lawyer's letterhead versus my alien number is XYZ and what's happening, there's a different way the letters are treated, unfortunately.
Okay. You want a question?
I have a simple question. I would like to know if the average police on the street has permission to arrest illegal immigrants.
I'm sorry, say that again?
If a police on the road has permission to arrest an illegal immigrant, in other words, let me tell you why I asked. Now, my daughter has a green card, okay? And she was with a friend, and he had a little fender bender with another individual, okay? And then when the cops came, she was in the car with him, right? And the cop said, he said that this is my witness. And then the cop said, tell me what you observed. And since she started to speak, he said, you have your green card, you have any identity, let me see your identity. Right? He didn't even wait for her to explain anything. He said, let me see your identity. We went back to the squad car, you checked the camera, and said, oh, you're good to go, you're safe. And he never asked her further to explain nothing about the accident. He moved aside, spoke to the two drivers, and he handled the matter from there. I mean, I would like to know if she was not documented, if he has the authority to arrest her as a...
No, the only time that we're gonna make an arrest is if somebody commits a crime. And then, but speaking particularly to an accident, usually when there's a vehicle accident, all vehicles involved and passengers in that vehicle and drivers have to be identified and put on the report.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, we have to do that.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
We have one last question. Do we have one last question?
Oh, yes. I have a question about taxes. So if someone filed taxes because, you know, they're supposed to, they've been working in this country, and they owe money because the government didn't take enough taxes out of their paycheck, but they have since become undocumented because whatever their status is has expired. So the question is, if they filed, should they continue and pay the taxes, or should they, because now they're subject to deportation, should they just kind of just wait until some other time when they become documented to pay it?
That's a great question.
I'll volunteer. I always have in my
know we're not accountants, right? But I would my little non-CPA response would be, don't mess with Uncle IRS. But if you earned a living while you were legal and you filed your taxes, I don't see why you would not pay taxes. I wouldn't give anybody any reason to draw attention to me. And I don't know if that's the right answer or not. That's what I would do. If you've been working legally, you were legally here, you began filing your taxes and something happened with your status and you're thinking not to pay because you're not documented, and they know that you filed and all that, I would follow the law. That's me. I would follow the law. That's my non-CPA 2 cents. Now let the attorney answer me.
And I'm going to answer it this way. In my email, I have a disclaimer. I am not a tax attorney. Right. And I let people know. But I will say this, seriously. So you're saying that they now have undocumented status?
They now have undocumented status. And they would have to get on a payment plan to draw attention to them. And they're undocumented. I don't know if the law requires undocumented people to pay taxes, but if they have to get on a payment plan which draws attention to them, and they're undocumented, should they do that if they're undocumented, or should they wait until they become documented and pay their taxes?
There's a thing in immigration called good moral character, right? Paying your taxes is the best indication that you would be a good citizen. Because think about it this way, when you apply for a green card, USCIS, when you're sitting at that green card interview, they're looking at you and saying, will you be a good citizen? Because that's the end game. That is the end game. So we have this, not we, USCIS Congress created good moral character. Pay your taxes, good moral character. You don't pay your taxes, you don't get the green card, you don't become a citizen. You will not be allowed to naturalize. That's why many undocumented immigrants pay their taxes, even though they're not required to, because if that day were to ever come where, what's the amnesty, say were to take place, like it did in the 80s, they might look and see, well, did you pay your taxes? That might be an indication, it might be an eligibility factor. So that's why a lot of undocumented immigrants pay their taxes, and then when they can legalize through marriage or through work or any other way, they don't want to have a lot of back taxes or just have that conversation. See, I pay my taxes, I have good moral character. I will add this, about 2 weeks ago, the IRS signed an agreement with the Trump administration where the IRS will share information with the Trump administration about undocumented people filing taxes. So then they have your employer information, your address, where to find you. That's when ICE will knock on your door. So that's one of those areas where this is new. This is new. So should they continue paying their taxes? Speak with an immigration attorney when they have more specifics. I'm not going to give you an answer to that question.
And a tax attorney.
And a tax attorney, absolutely.
Well, this has really been a very enlightening, educational, informative. I can go on and on, but I would like to have the opportunity, give you the opportunity to have one last word.
Yeah, sure, I'll start. Going down. So my last word would be one, thank you for everyone being here. Thank you for all of your questions. Thank you for your attention and your feedback. My last word would be community. You're not alone. Plug into these resources. Do not allow the design to alienate us from one another with these terms. Like Sister said, words have power. And the scripture says life and death, right? So speak life into one another. Don't let that be your story. You write your own story, right? And together we can get through this. This may be uncharted territory right now, but just this event right now shows us that we have the power to make change. And it starts right here. So my last word is to be that change. Be that change. Thank you.
Yeah. When we do events like this is since January, this is my second time on an immigration panel. And I was fortunate to be an organizer for another panel in Gwinnett County. When events like this occur, if you're afraid to attend, send a representative. Because information has value. When you have police department, interim chief or chief, you have an immigration attorneys and members of the community who are present to dispense information and to help, just to diffuse confusion, and to offer advisement. Find some way to connect. If you're afraid to come, send a representative. If the community is in need of a more virtual event because you're afraid to come out of your house, something like that can be organized. But when these events, to me, with what's going on right now, the state of affairs of this country and immigration, these rooms should be packed, right? Unfortunately, they're not, but we have members of the community that can take information back, and that's good. But if there's some sort of apprehension about coming out, send a representative, because we're here to help. get in contact with your community representatives, your local officials. If you have organizations that represent your country or culture, get in contact with those individuals. If you don't, get in contact with any consulate that can help direct you to where you need to go in order to get the assistance you need. Information is out there, the assistance is out there, and you have individuals who are genuine, understand the process, and are genuine about getting you the help that you need. I want to thank Caribbean Focus TV for this wonderful panel. It is needed. I know there's going to be more of these, and for those of you who are attending out there, thank you so much for being here. We're glad to do this. Thank you.
I want to thank Caribbean Focus TV for inviting me to be part of this panel to represent law enforcement in general, and particularly Austell Police Department. Definitely to just kind of unravel some of the misconceptions that are out there amongst the community. We are here to enhance quality of life, period. And we're here to protect and serve. So I just ask that you build a relationship, if it's not with us, if you're not in the Austell community, but with your local police department, build that relationship and establish that trust so you are not victimized. We have resources. We are very intentional with our community engagement, community outreach, community policing to establish partnerships and relationships with other resources so we can provide them to everyone in the community. I'm always saying that every community, every person deserves an outstanding, excellent, professional police services. And that's what we're going to provide across the board, no matter what.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly, and I'm not going to take a lot of time with everything that was just said here. I thank Dawnette for having me here, Caribbean Focus TV, for the ones who came in attendance, and wherever this is going, I hope that you definitely learned something here. I've learned a lot as well. And in terms of fear, I think that's what the goal is. And when you are fearful, you're irrational in your actions. So take a beat. If you're a non-documented immigrant, tap into all of your resources, tune into Caribbean Focus TV and see what's being offered into the community, and get in contact with someone who can assist you, be it an immigration attorney, the councilman. I'm quite sure the liaison officers at your local police department. Again, send a representative if you are undocumented. Community advocate, there is help out there for you. And things can change. An administration only lasts for 4 years, hopefully. Apolitical here, but as an immigration attorney. But so, you know, the pendulum will swing back. The pendulum will swing back, so, yeah.
Well, we really want to thank you all for being here because there are a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of fear. And because of your being here, you have dispelled a lot of that and provided the information that Caribbean Focus TV viewers, for the people in the audience, to have the information that they need. So thank you all. Wasn't this just a great esteemed panelist up here? Thank you all for coming. I know we ran over time, but I think it was needed. Great answers from our panelists. Thank you so much. There's still food here. Please partake in the food, chat. You can chat amongst each other. We want to thank Cherry for being here. We want to thank Graham, Monica, Cherry's bodyguard. Everyone, this has been I'm an immigrant. And I get passionate about panels like this because to be in a country and you don't feel like you're wanted or needed, or at any moment you can be taken away, and you built a life here and family here. It is great to know that you have the resources in our communities. You have law enforcement, you have immigration attorneys, you have the councilman, you have advocate, you have family, you have friends. Turn to those. Please get involved with your respective Caribbean association or any other association, because knowledge is power, and it is important for us to stand together and not have fear. We cannot operate out of fear. Caribbean Focus TV will always bring you information about immigration's updates, immigration specials. This may not be the last one. We had a first one. So stay tuned to Caribbean Focus TV. We appreciate you all for spending time with us today, and we ask that you all stay focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.